Welcome to the It Factor. We're Jimmy and I,
Exploring a new blog post by Mr. Len Kaplan,
CEO of CDML,
an MSP in Queens, NY,
offering network management,
VoIP and UCaaS,
cybersecurity, compliance.
IISR,
Yeah.
and Microsoft 365 and Azure.
If you're a small business owner or manage IT for a growing organization,
This deep dive is for you.
stay tuned.
You know, it's interesting how many small business owners I talk to who think cybersecurity is something only big companies
Right.
need to worry about.
Right. But Len's blog series.
Really drives home the point
Yeah,
that cybersecurity is crucial for businesses of all sizes.
absolutely.
Especially with all these regulations popping up.
Yeah.
He breaks it down into 5 parts.
Makes it much easier to digest.
much easier.
Let's dive into the first part, which focuses on this regulation called 23 NYCRR 500.
Okay.
What's the deal with this, and why should a small business owner in New York care?
Well, think of 23 NYCRR 500 as New York State saying,
Okay.
hey, financial businesses.
You're dealing with people's money and sensitive data,
Right.
so you better have your Cybersecurity Act together.
Okay.
And that includes small businesses, too.
Gotcha.
It mandates things like risk assessments,
Okay.
which basically means figuring out where your vulnerabilities are.
So kind of like checking your house for leaky pipes before they cause a flood, you're looking for weak spots in your system.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then there's secure data storage.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about having strong passwords.
Right.
It's about how you store data, who has access to it, and what happens if a device gets lost or stolen.
Right.
And then, of course, you need a plan for when the cyber attack happens.
Because let's be honest,
Yes.
it's not a matter of if, but when. Right.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of small businesses fall short.
Okay.
They think, oh, it won't happen to me, or I'm too small to be a target.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, cyber criminals often see smaller businesses as easier targets.
Right.
Because they might not have the same level of security. Makes sense.
As those big corporations.
It's like assuming your house won't get robbed because you live on a quiet street.
Right.
Yeah,
And the consequences of a cyber attack can be devastating for a small business.
absolutely.
You could lose data,
Uh-huh.
face hefty fines for noncompliance,
Right.
and even damage your reputation,
Oof.
which could be the hardest thing to recover from.
So 23 NYCRR 500 isn't just about checking boxes. It's about protecting your business, your clients, and your livelihood.
It is.
And Len's blog emphasizes that it's not the only regulation out there.
Right.
He also mentions the Written Information Security Plan,
The WISP?
the NY Shield Act,
Yes.
and the PCI DSS. What are these, and how do they all fit together?
It can feel overwhelming, I know.
Yeah.
But think of it as a layered approach to security.
Okay.
The WISP is like your cybersecurity playbook.
Hmm.
It's a document that outlines everything,
Okay.
from how you handle sensitive data to what you do if there's a breach. It's required by the federal Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act.
Okay.
So it applies even beyond New York.
So even if you're not in New York,
Yes,
having a WISP is a good idea, especially if you're handling sensitive data.
absolutely.
Okay.
Then you have the NY Shield Act,
Mhm.
which is specific to New York,
Right.
and focuses on protecting the personal information of New York residents.
Okay.
This one really broadens the definition of what's considered sensitive data
Gotcha.
and who needs to protect it.
So even if you're not a financial business in the traditional sense,
Right.
if you have data on New York residents,
Yes.
you need to be paying attention to the Shield Act.
Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, there's the PCI DSS,
Uh-huh.
which is all about protecting credit card information.
Right.
If you process credit card payments,
Yeah.
you need to be PCI DSS compliant.
Okay.
No two ways about it.
So we have this federal regulation
The GLBA.
requiring a WISP.
Yes.
We have a New York-specific regulation, the NY Shield Act, broadening data protection. And then we have the PCI DSS,
Yep.
focusing specifically on credit card data.
Exactly.
It sounds like cybersecurity for a small business in New York is a multi-layered challenge.
It is, but it's a manageable challenge.
Okay.
Len's blog post series really does a great job
Yeah.
of breaking down these seemingly complex regulations
Right.
and making them understandable for a small business owner.
And that's what we're here for, too.
Absolutely.
We're going to dive deeper into each of these regulations
Yes.
and discuss practical steps you can take to protect your business.
Sounds good.
Let's move on to part 2 of Len's blog series, where he talks about building a secure foundation with the WISP and access controls.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So We've established that cybersecurity is non-negotiable for small businesses,
Right.
especially in New York.
Especially in New York, yeah.
Now let's look at how to build that strong foundation,
Okay.
starting with the WSP.
You know,
Right.
when I first heard about the Written Information Security Plan,
Yeah.
I thought it was just another piece of paperwork to file away and forget about.
It's easy to feel that way, but think of it as a roadmap
Okay.
to protect your business.
Okay.
It's where you put down in writing what data you have,
Uh-huh.
how you protect it, who has access,
Right.
and what happens if something goes wrong.
It was like having a fire escape plan, but for your data.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You wouldn't wait for a fire to figure out how to get everyone out safely, would you?
Right.
The WSP is your plan for navigating the chaos of a cyber attack.
Okay, so Len's blog post mentions that a well-crafted WSP should cover things like
Yes.
data retention policies.
Right.
What exactly does that mean for a small business owner?
Think about all the data you store.
Okay.
Customer information,
Yeah?
financial records, employee details.
Right.
You can't just keep everything forever.
Right.
A data retention policy outlines what you need to keep, for how long,
Okay.
and how you securely dispose of it when it's no longer needed.
Okay. This not only helps with compliance,
Right.
but also minimizes your risk in case of a breach.
That makes sense. The less data you keep,
Exactly.
the less there is to lose, right?
Absolutely. The YSP also covers incident response procedures.
Okay.
This is where you map out exactly what to do if a breach occurs.
Okay.
Who do you call?
Right.
How do you contain the damage? What steps do you take to investigate and recover?
Yeah.
Having a clear procedure in place can save you precious time and headaches
Right.
when you're already under pressure.
It's like having a first aid kit for your business, ready to go when you need it.
Yes.
Len also talks about vendor management
Uh-huh.
in the context of the YSP.
Yeah.
How does that come into play?
Think about all the third-party vendors you rely on.
Okay.
Your IT provider,
Right.
your payment processor,
Hmm.
your cloud storage provider.
Okay.
They all have access to some of your data,
Uh-huh.
which means their security practices impact your security too. Oh, wow. I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So it's not just about securing your own systems.
Right.
It's about making sure the people you work with are also secure.
Exactly. Your WSP should include a process for vetting vendors, assessing their security practices,
Right.
and ensuring they meet your standards. You're essentially extending your security net
Okay.
to include your partners.
And what about access controls?
Yes.
How does that fit into the whole WSP picture?
Access controls are crucial
Okay.
for making sure that only the right people have access to the right data. Imagine someone losing a company laptop
Right.
with access to all your customer data.
Yeah.
What could happen?
Oh, that's scary. It could be disastrous for the business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why it's essential to implement access controls.
Okay.
These could include things like strong passwords,
Right.
multi-factor authentication, and role-based access, where employees only have access to the data they need for their specific job.
If someone in marketing
Right.
doesn't need access to financial records,
Right.
they shouldn't have it.
Correct.
It's about limiting the potential damage.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about creating a system where people only have access to what they absolutely need.
Right.
This minimizes the risk of unauthorized access,
Okay.
whether it's intentional or accidental.
This all makes a lot of sense,
Eh,
but it sounds like a lot to manage,
It can be.
especially for a small business owner
Yes.
who's already juggling a million things.
It can be daunting, but it's not impossible.
Right.
And there are resources and tools available to help you. Remember, building a strong cybersecurity foundation starts with that WSP.
Okay.
And once that's in place,
Right.
you can start layering on other security measures.
Speaking of layering, Len's blog also delves into risk management,
Okay.
encryption, and continuous monitoring.
Yes.
Let's unpack those in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
All right, so we've covered the WIP and access controls. It's amazing how much goes into building a secure foundation for a small business. Now, Len's blog dives into risk management, encryption, and continuous monitoring. I have to admit, these sound a bit intimidating.
I get it. They're technical topics, but understanding the basics can make a huge difference in your cybersecurity posture. Let's start with risk management. You know how you might avoid walking alone in a dark alley because it feels risky?
Yeah, you're more likely to get mugged, right?
Exactly. Risk management in cybersecurity is similar. You're identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, then figuring out how to reduce their likelihood or impact.
So like instead of walking down that dark alley, you take a well-lit, busy street.
That's a great analogy. In a business context, it could be choosing a strong password policy or regularly updating your software to avoid vulnerabilities that hackers could exploit.
Len's blog mentions a CPA firm that got hacked because they were using outdated software. Oh, that's a good reminder to keep things updated. But what about encryption? I hear that word thrown around a lot, but I'm not really sure how it works.
Think of it like sending a secret message in a coded language. Only someone with the key can decipher it. Encryption takes your data and scrambles it, making it unreadable to anyone without the decryption key.
So even if someone got their hands on my data, they wouldn't be able to make sense of it without the key. That's reassuring.
Absolutely. It's like putting your sensitive information in a locked, safe encryption protects your data both when it's stored on your computers called data at rest and when it's being transmitted over the internet called data in transit.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And lastly, there's continuous monitoring. Does that mean someone has to watch my computer screens 24/7?
Not exactly. Thankfully, technology can do most of the heavy lifting. Continuous monitoring involves using tools to keep an eye on your systems for suspicious activity. It's like having a security alarm system for your digital world.
So what kind of things would these tools be looking for?
They can detect unusual login attempts, file changes that shouldn't be happening, or even traffic patterns that suggest someone is trying to sneak in.
So it's like having a security guard who's always alert and looking for anything out of the ordinary.
Exactly. The key is early detection. The faster you identify a potential problem, the faster you can contain it and prevent it from becoming a full-blown disaster.
This has been incredibly insightful. So we've gone from understanding the regulatory landscape in New York, building that secure foundation with the WSP and access controls, to implementing risk management, encryption, and continuous monitoring. It feels like we've covered a lot, but also just scratched the surface of this whole cybersecurity thing.
And that's the thing about cybersecurity. It's an ongoing journey, not a destination. The threats are constantly evolving, so you need to stay informed and adapt.
Absolutely. If there's one key takeaway from all of this, it's that cybersecurity is not a one-time fix. It's a mindset, a continuous process of learning and improvement, and honestly, it's an investment in the future of your business.
I couldn't agree more. A secure business is a resilient business.
Thank you so much for diving into all of this with us today. We hope you feel empowered to take control of your small business's cybersecurity.